All right, I think we'll get started then. I don't want to keep everybody waiting too long with this nice weather. I'm sure the last thing everybody wants to do is get stuck on your computer in the summer here. So we'll go ahead and get started. Quick introduction. My name is Joe Beuchel. I work in the biology department. So I've been teaching online since around 2008 or so. And I got my ION certification a number of years back. And so I've been teaching in person, hybrid, and online classes for quite a few years. That being said, by no means do I have all the answers here. There's still things I change every semester, try new things out. They add new features to Blackboard or Collaborate. We have pandemics that throw us all online. And so, it's constantly adjusting and changing. But I just want to highlight a few things from the assessment perspective. Today is going to be mine. We've got three presenters, so I'm going first. Jackie will go second and talk about universal design, and then Beth will follow up third with like kind of the overall course mapping exercise. So I'll go ahead. I've just got a short presentation here. Hopefully you've maybe had a chance to watch the video that was already recorded. If not, it's available in the Blackboard shell under the assessment. I think it's module 4, I want to, 3 or 4, I can't remember which one. But the recording's there for you to look at, and feel free to send me messages if you have any questions on that. But right now we'll go over stuff. Feel free, if you have questions, you can interrupt me, you can ask any questions you have. So I'll just give a quick overview of some of the things I covered there, show you a few things, and then we'll have some time for any questions, answers you have. All right, so assessment, focusing on this idea of formative versus summative assessment, kind of the big distinction here. A lot of what I'll be focusing on here is probably more on the formative side, because it seems like most people are maybe a bit less familiar with that side of assessment versus the summative. So the overall goal of each of these, summative is kind of the typical end of semester, final exam, capstone project, those types of activities that people are pretty familiar with. And going through your schooling and everything, it's probably something you have a good understanding of. The formative side is maybe a bit less formalized and maybe something you're doing, especially in like your face-to-face classes. But as you move online and it's asynchronous, it can be a bit harder to do that. And so it's often you maybe want to try and design a bit more of that into your online instruction to be able to offer that feedback back and forth. There's a lot more interaction of helping students and the instructors understand where are people struggling, what can be done to improve them before it's too late. Because once you've taken that final exam and you failed it, well, it's too late. There's not the ability to correct it at that point. So one of the big differences here is formative is during that process. We want to identify where are the deficiencies before it's too late to correct them. Where that summative, this is showcasing and showing us that you actually did learn something, you understand this, you can, implement this into practice. So maybe you have some kind of, accreditation, or they're going to have to take some kind of standardized exam. That's where they're going to showcase it on the summative, but these formative assessments are to help prepare them for that at that point. So monitoring the learning process with the formative side, summative, that's more of your assigning your grades aspect of it. With formative assessment, it's that idea of we want to improve them. So when we'll talk about like grading and evaluation of some of these things, with formative assessment, maybe it's a bit more of you're just giving more of participation points with this, or it's more of like a pass-fail type thing. It's not so much that they get the perfect answer immediately. It's the idea of, all right, let's help them figure out what they don't understand, and then maybe give them some practice so they can do that then before they hit that summative evaluation. Let me see here, I think, okay. There's often a difference in scale here. You know, formatives are often maybe done on like a daily basis, you know, or even little content units within a longer lecture. So it's often a much smaller amount of information there, where summatives, you know, you're often talking about multiple chapters, units that cover multiple different areas. So there's a difference in the breadth frequently too. Formative, again, this is a process that often gets repeated multiple times. You can be doing kind of the same type of evaluation tool to help people understand what they do or don't understand. And so it's more of this repetition, doing it over and continually evaluating it. Are you improving? Are you understanding this? Where that summative, it's not really a repeated effort usually. It's more of, this is the final product. This is showcasing what I understand. So before I show the video, just anybody have any questions about the differences between those, how you might use each of these? In the video, again, I mentioned a number of different tools and tactics. I'm going to show a few ideas here. I've got a short video and some other ways of doing it to help you with this in the online setting. But anybody have questions before I play this? No? All right. I'll take the silence as a no. Everybody's good. All right. Here's just a short video clip of one of these tools that I've found that's helpful. I've been using this both in my face-to-face classes, and then it was an easy transition when I go into online teaching as well. But it's a way you can embed questions. You can either put this into things like Google Slides or PowerPoint presentations. You can do it just with a web page too if you want. So it's pretty flexible. There's lots of different question types you can do, but it's a great way to get some quick feedback from your students. You know, like I just did, often when you're doing a lecture online and you ask anybody if they have questions and it's just crickets, you hear nothing back. And so this is a way to get some feedback there, a little bit more interaction. You're wondering, oh, did somebody just log into the classroom and they're in a different room, they're not even paying attention here. So here's a quick way to get people re-involved again. And also those people that are maybe a bit more reserved and don't want to tend to raise their hand or volunteer information, but you can real quickly get the pulse of all the students in the class and see, are they understanding this or not? You can leave this open-ended questions where they can type in little messages, so it's not just right or wrong. It can maybe be a start of more of a discussion for you. So there's a lot of different ways to use it. And it's free, for our purposes. I think you can have up to 50 people free. So with our class sizes, it's usually not a problem at all. You don't have to pay any subscription fees or anything.
I'm hosting a meeting remotely, and let's just say improvements could be made. What does everybody think about this outreach project? Anyone? Anyone at all? Just shout it out. Or
I've got the DVD player. It's only
hey, everybody!
I don't really like the PowerPoint.
So, I started using Poll Everywhere. With Poll Everywhere, I can ask all sorts of questions. Multiple choice, open-ended, yes or no, and make it easy for everyone to participate. On a scale of 1 to 10, how empowered are we feeling after Motivation Monday? They can answer online or by text, and the results are available instantly in real time. And I can even share my screen to share the results. So instead of wondering what people are thinking, we can identify important topics and have better conversations. Let's talk about professional development. It's great for online classes and webinars too. All right, everybody, let's take a quiz. What does Poll Everywhere do? With Poll Everywhere, I can see what my audience is actually retaining, so I know which areas need more explanation. Poll Everywhere makes remote meetings more productive. That's right! And to increase participation, I can even send the survey link in advance. Stop sitting through remote meetings that aren't even remotely productive. See what I did there? Get live feedback that helps you have better remote meetings. Poll Everywhere. Sign up and get started today. Now, where's that end meeting button? Oh, there it is.
All right, so quick recap there. Yeah, I saw Bob, you had a question about how this could work asynchronously. This particular tool, I think, does work best for synchronous courses. That's really where it's best. You could do it asynchronously because you can set this up so that they could respond on their own. Maybe if you wanted to say, here's a few questions for you to do before class, and then we're going to look at responses. You do something like that, although I think maybe there's other tools that could work better for something like that. But this is a great way either for like the ERL classes where you're live all together. That type of setting is where this works great. Or even back in the face-to-face class, I use it there a lot too. You can have quieter people in the class, but they don't have a problem, being able to respond this way, kind of more anonymously, and doing it that way. And you can set it up however you want to track it or do this, whatever, do you want to give points or not? There's lots of different options, again, that depending on how your class works, how you want to set it up. So it's pretty flexible. Or if, and so when you're doing it in like PowerPoint here, then you can just embed questions like this. And so, if I wanted to, I could just give this live, and what normally is happening, since I'm in windowed mode here, so usually it would come up with a link. I'm not at my regular house here, and so I'm doing it a little bit differently. And so usually this pops up with either a web link or there is a text message address that they can send it to respond and get their questions. And then again, you can show the responses, you can hide them on you want, depending on how you want to do it. But there's a lot of other tools here, Paradoc, Padlet, Flipgrid, these are all different tools you can use, especially if you're talking about like asynchronously. Like Flipgrid is kind of like these flashcard type activities you can do, and that might be much more kind of like self-paced, people on their own do. Kahoot, I've had great success with this as well. So if you're familiar with it or not, it's kind of like the trivia games you might see in like some bars and sports bars and that kind of stuff, where there's a question that comes up, and then the faster that you respond, you get more points the quicker you answer that. So often I might use that as like a review tool before the exam comes up, give them a little practice of some of those questions. And so there's that incentive, you can kind of make it a game out of it. So see who ends up with the highest points or whatever. That I usually do synchronously, but you can set that one up to be asynchronously. So everybody just does it on their own, and it just can keep track of how many points each person gets. Sometimes I've heard people give like extra credit points to like the top winners or whatever. However you want to set it up, that's an option for you. But I usually do that one, live too, with like the ERL classes we've had over the past year. So quick questions on any of that video presentation. I'll just do kind of the assignment overview, and then I can jump into Blackboard and highlight a few tools there if anybody has questions. David, yeah, go ahead if you have a question.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So my question. My question is, I have trouble. I'm sorry, my mic is a little. I'm gonna mute this. My question is that I know a hard time is how do we enroll our individual students in these apps? They're free, but do we have to do every student individually, or are there ways we can synthesize it and move our classes over totally? Does that make sense?
Yeah, great question. So it's going to depend on exactly which software you're using, what's the process. For most of the ones that I've shown, it's not, you don't have to do an enrollment process ahead of time. It's just, you're going to give them usually like a link or a code to join you. So With Poll Everywhere, the nice thing is there's a web address for them to visit if they want to respond like in a web browser, or if they want to use it on their phone, they can reply with text messages. And it's the same number, it's the same web link that you use the entire semester. It's to you, it would be the same for any of your courses you use. So it's one time that they would do that, and so they can bookmark that, or if they have a text thread in their phone, it's just revisiting that every day whenever you use it. Things like Kahoot, it's just like a little code that's there. If I actually go back, I think you can see it. So they visit this kahoot.it, and then this PIN number, they just put that PIN number in, and then that would record the results for you if you wanted. So there's not a lot of setup. Some of these other ones, it can vary where you do have to kind of like pre-enroll them. But most of them, it's not a lot of work.
Great.
And especially with so many people moving to online, a lot of these things have really been tailored to try to make it easier for people, since there were a lot of people that maybe weren't real tech savvy that kind of got pushed into online teaching the past year. So it seems like many of them have made a lot of improvements to help make it easier for people.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep. So anybody else have any questions? If not, give a quick overview of the little assignment for this module. So, each module has a little activity to do. So this one's going to be just come up with some type of assessment, could be summative or formative. I'll just say, a multiple choice exam maybe isn't going to be the best example here of showcasing your understanding of this. But it's up to you to choose whatever you want. So we just want to highlight, what are some of the course objectives that you're targeting with this. Give the instructions as you give them to the student. So, describe this, because particularly in that asynchronous setting, you're not right there to give clarifications for somebody as they're wanting to work on this. And so that can mean, there might be a delay, maybe a day or something before you get back to them if something isn't clear to them. So you want to try and make your directions as specific and clear, give examples, do as much as you can to try to make it so that they can understand what your expectations are. Then describe, how is this going to help the learner understand that? How is it going to help you understand what they're understanding? And then we want you to use like an example of a grading rubric for this assignment too. Not necessarily that you have to use a rubric for every activity you do, but frequently find that they're very useful. It's a great thing that a lot of, as our accreditors are coming to us and looking for, how are we evaluating this? Examples of rubrics have been very useful in that setting. And also it can help the students understand your expectations ahead of time. If they have all these criteria and they see how many points each of these are worth, it's a great way to help make it clear for you, what do you want them to do? They understand what their expectations are. And then grading time, it's easy to see, oh, I lost points because of this and this and this. So it cuts down on a lot of questions about, why did I get this grade? Why did I lose these points there? So it's been useful, and I found it, especially some of this repetitive grading, it can help you get through it a little bit quicker by using some of the features. I'm going to show you in Blackboard here real quick, because it seems to be one of the features people probably haven't used too frequently, but a lot of people, once they start using it, find out it's quite useful for them. And the nice thing, it's automatically putting the grades into the gradebook for you, so you're not having to keep track of separate Excel spreadsheets and inputting it here. It's kind of a one-stop shop that does it all for you. So let me get out of this, and I'm going to jump over into the web browser quick. All right. All right, so here's just an example course. And so if you go down on the left-hand menu here, you see there's one that says Course Tools. So if I click on that, it's showing you a lot of these different tools that might be of use to you. But in particular, this rubric one is one that I want to highlight here. So depending on your course shell that was set up that you might be using, it might be blank. You might have some sample ones in here. I'm just going to give you an example here of one of these. We can, I know the CTE has a bunch of these samples that they can help you load into your course if you want, but you don't have to do this from scratch. There's a lot of them already out there, and just adapt a lot of them for your use. You can make them as complex as you want, as simple as you want. So everything here is pretty customizable for what you want. How many different columns of grading points do you want? So if I want to add another one, I can just add another column, another row. This, I would say, is maybe one of them that's a little bit more complex. It doesn't have to be with this many categories or columns. If point value doesn't work for you so well, you prefer percentages, you can pick that option. If you want to use ranges, so like these are all just a specific point value that's listed in here. But if you want, oh, I want this to be like 3 to 5 points and I want this to be 5 to 8 points, you can do that with the point range values here. So it's very flexible. There's a lot of examples. If you just go in Google and do sample rubric, you can find it. A lot of them for your subject area might be specific. You have something kind of ready to go with a lot of the typical categories you'd use. Find some of those, and then you can just input this in here. There's a little work of putting it in here the first time, but the great thing is then it carries over every semester for you. It's not something you have to do a lot. If you use the same rubric for more than one assignment, you can just reuse it multiple times. So say if I were to go into, I made one of these rubrics and I wanted to use it for, say, a discussion board. All right, so I make my discussion board and I'm going to go in and edit that. Then what I would do is right here is where you can say the associated rubrics that you want to use for that grading purpose. So if you haven't already set up one, right as you're making your assignment, you can just go in here and pick create new rubric and it'll guide you through that process. But then here, the main thing I would highlight is I always think it makes sense to make this rubric available to students so that they can see with their scores. To me, that just makes sense that they can see this beforehand. You can make it so they only see it after grading, but I think it's a great tool to help them understand what are you going to be looking for when you grade this, okay? And so it can cut down on some of those questions about, how long or whatever. A lot of that, you can have in your assignment description as well as in this rubric to help guide them through. And then when you're going through and doing the grading, it's just a matter of clicking on those boxes. So this is a summer school class that I don't have any submissions for yet, but if I were to go back in here, essentially what happens is all I have to do is I would click on whichever box this would be that I would want to give that point value, and it's going to do all the math for me. It's going to add it all up in there. I can add additional comments if I want to any of these places, so it's not preventing you from giving additional feedback, but it does all the math and it just makes it real quick to be like, oh, yep, they did this, helps me identify, all right, this is what I'm looking for. Yep, they met that. Oh, they missed this. Click on that box, and then it just helps get through that grading process a little bit more quickly, I think. Any other questions on some of the Blackboard tools for assessment? Anybody had questions on?
Hi, this is Tracy. I have a question regarding this rubrics for an examination, or maybe I'm not understanding it completely because I haven't done the module. But if I have an assessment, because this seems as though it fits more with a discussion, more so than it does for an assessment. So I'm not understanding how I would set up a rubrics for that.
So are you talking like an exam?
Well, I guess that's maybe what I'm not understanding, and I do apologize to you because I haven't looked at this module ahead of time. But I know you said not to use multiple choice questions, but say we have a discussion, well, not a discussion question, but maybe an exam that has completion. Would I have a rubrics for that?
So for like an exam, it's probably more you do a lot of that in the exam itself. You wouldn't have a separate rubric for it, but when you're giving, even if it's an essay question, there's that chance to kind of give like a sample response that has that. So for exams, that's why I'm saying for this assignment submission is maybe not the best fit. Now, and I'm not saying you need a rubric for every assignment activity in your course. Like, no, I don't do that myself. So pick something, whether it's, it can even be something like a minute paper, muddiest point that some people do, where it's like, write down one thing you learned and one thing that was confusing in the class session today. And so you could have something like that, and it could be real quick and easy, just be like, oh, basically, you completed this or not, and you give feedback that way. So it doesn't have to be a rubric for every assignment, and exams in particular, often, maybe you give kind of more point-by-point feedback to each session.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, if not, I'm going to go ahead and I will turn it over to Jackie then. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. And as Joe said, we will try to kind of keep our time shortened or brief a bit just because of the nice weather. But I'm going to talk to you about universal design, and then I'll also talk to you about the assignment, although I know I'm usually the last module that people get to. But I will talk about some tips for completing the assignment and then address any questions that you may have. So let me get this. So introducing myself. So I'm a full-time faculty in criminal justice. I, like Joe, have been here full-time since about 2007, part-time since 2001. I also am ION certified. I'm on the peer review for online course development, and I developed 4 online courses for the criminal justice program. And again, also learning as we go along. Universal design was something that I had to probably was the area that I had to most do some research on and learn how to make sure that my courses were accessible. So, okay, let me get this going. Okay. So some of the things I'm going to talk to you is about some tips on how to make different part of your course materials more accessible. I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between accessibility and accommodation, and then offer you some tips as well as talking about the assignment that is due for this module. So first of all, I do want to point out that Triton does a really stellar job at working with students with disabilities through the Center for Access and Accommodative Services. The aim here is to talk about information that allows all of our classes to be accessible. And the reason I say that is for accommodation is adaptations that can't be anticipated or standardized, and they are different for each individual. Another key difference is that with accommodations, you have to tell the center what your accommodative needs are and what your disability is, almost like you have to announce it. And being accessible means that students don't need to announce or explain their disabilities. In our course design, the focus is and should be on increasing accessibility with the goal of decreasing the need for accommodations. So why is accessibility so important in online learning, and perhaps even more important than in face-to-face learning? A significant number of people have disabilities that can make it difficult for them to take online classes. According to some of the research that's out there, about 1 in 5 learners have some kind of disability, and over half of these have a severe disability. Many students, though, with disabilities actually prefer online courses over face-to-face courses. It means that they don't have to announce their disability. It means that they view themselves as being on equal footing with other students. It's also important to point out that there is a legal aspect to this discussion as well. Accessibility is required by law. Federal law requires universities to make courses accessible. The American with Disabilities Act prevents any college or university from excluding disabled students in activities, services, and programs. And part of our instruction here hopes to move Triton towards being a more accessible, centered institution of learning. Okay, so now we're going to spend some time talking about a very frequent element of online courses, and that's the use of textual documents. These can include Word documents, Excel files, PowerPoint presentations, pages on blackboards, PDFs, and other documents. The core principles are the same for all document types, but the individual steps vary depending on the tool that you're going to be using, and I will walk you through the different types of tools. The key thing to keep in mind are to use headings, lists, format tables correctly, check overall accessibility of your documents with the built-in accessibility checker, follow color and contrast settings, and I'll show you some different websites to help you with that. Use meaningful hyperlinks and add alternative text images, and I will explain each of these throughout this presentation. So first, let's look at Word documents, as they are probably the most commonly used documents that we use in teaching. Additionally, Microsoft Word is a commonly used application among individuals with a variety of disabilities and is reasonably accessible. The text within Word documents can be read by assistive technologies such as screen readers and Braille devices. In order for these Word documents to be fully accessible, though, you must follow some key policies. So let's talk about some of the key elements of Word documents that you need to make them accessible. First, as you create these files, you should always use headings to format and mark headings and indicate the organization of the content. You should use the built-in style feature in Word that helps people with vision impairments understand how the document is organized. Screen readers and Braille users can also jump between headings, which makes navigation much more efficient than if there were no headings at all. You should talk about or look at making text large enough and bold enough. And you should use the built-in style features, which is really important, rather than manually doing the headings yourself. PowerPoint follows similar rules, as they also have built-in accessibility checkers that I'll go through. And it is always best to use their built-in templates. These templates are already designed to be accessible. Other recommendations include using text for images and using headers. The main concern is to make sure the reading order of the elements on each slide is correct, because it serves as a bit of a roadmap for the reader. So here is where you will find where you can check your accessibility, and it will tell you not only what area is not accessible, but also how to fix it. All MS Office products include Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Excel have an accessibility check built into the program. As you can see in this slide, you can find the accessibility checker by clicking on the Review tab and then click on the Check Accessibility button. If you have a Mac, it also has a built-in accessibility checker. It's accessible from the Tools menu by clicking Check Accessibility. In this slide, I'm going to show you, or I do show you, two different examples of what appears when you run the accessibility checker. The image on the left reports what we are all aiming for in our document, and that says no accessibility issues found, that it's entirely accessible. The image on the right is from an Excel file in which I shaded columns different colors, and the accessibility checker indicated that the color contrast was not adequate to allow people to read the text in the shaded areas. And the great thing about using the built-in checker from Microsoft is it tells you not only why and the reason you need to fix each issue, but also explains how to fix each issue. Okay, so let's look at color, contrast, and some other accessibility issues. On this slide, we're going to look at color and accessibility. First, make sure that your colors are not your only method of conveying important information, such as the bad design here, where it says, yes, Google Docs and slides. Thank you, Francisco. Complete the question highlighted in green, question 1. If somebody has vision issues or color issues, they don't know what question is highlighted in green. So don't use color alone to convey meaning. Make a distinction, make a comparison, set something off or apart from the rest of the page. And this is something I know that I had to quickly change after reviewing some of these materials. If you categorize something by color alone, those who are color blind or visually impaired will not benefit from the color distinction. In this slide, we talk about color contrast. And we have to take into account that there are some colors that are not easily seen for individuals who have color blindness. These individuals need sufficient color contrast to see and to determine imagery. There are also specific color combinations that are particularly problematic for the people who are colorblind. One of the great tools out there is called WebAIM, as shown on this slide, and also which is accessible for you through this module. And what WebAIM is, it's a color contrast checker that is available to you all. It'll make sure that there is enough of a contrast and show how some color contrasts can be problematic. Okay, now let's talk about images. Oops. Let's talk about hyperlinks, and then we will talk about images. You should always aim to write concise and meaningful hyperlinks text in documents. If the link text is meaningless or too long, students that use screen readers will have trouble really figuring out where the link is going to take them or what the link is all about. Keep the link text concise and make sure that it makes sense out of the context. Avoid just embedding the link. Okay, so now let's talk about images. With images, the important message is to make sure that you label them in the manner that you intend to use them and in the manner that they are being used. All images you include in documents and on pages should include alternative text, also referred to as alt text. These are invisible text attached to images. It is read aloud by a screen reader, enabling someone who can't see the image to access the meaning of the image. Programs such as Microsoft Word and PowerPoint enable you to add alternative text to images. You can also add alternative text on every image that's embedded in Blackboard. Alternative text is required for all images, and writing it can be tricky, as the text that you include can be different for images that are active, informational, redundant, or textual. So let's look at a few examples. In active images, such as the one on the top left, the image serves as a link or a button. For active images, the alt text should refer to the function of the image. In informational images, such as the map shown on the top right, the image is not active but conveys important information that is not given in a caption or the body of the content. The same here, the alternative text should be the same information as the image. So here it would be map of the United States. For images that contain text, such as the one seen on the bottom left here, the alternative text would be the same as the text in the image. So here it would be, this is an example of a textual image, and the bottom right image is a decorative image, as it does not convey any information, and it would simply be alt equals. Okay, so let's talk about PDFs a little bit, as we all use them, but they do tend to be problematic in terms of accessibility. We've often been told to use PDFs of our syllabus to discourage students from attempting to alter the syllabus to change rules. We use PDFs to make sure that documents arrive with the format that we intended intact. However, from an accessibility perspective, PDFs should be avoided whenever possible, or it should be included as a secondary source. PDFs are the most frequently cited issue for learners with disabilities. Instead of using a PDF, you should post instructor-created content directly into Blackboard. If you want to link to a PDF, that's fine, but again, make sure it's a secondary form of information. And then finally, let's talk about videos. TED Talks, etc., videos in general are a very popular learning tool that we tend to include in many of our different classes. Just like every element of your online course, you have to make sure that your videos are accessible as well. Many of the elements that we talked about in visual media apply to videos as well. First of all, you should use colors carefully and in good contrast. If there is text on a screen, it should be easy to read, large enough font, simple font, and make sure it's on the screen long enough so that people have a chance to read it. You should always add captions to your videos. These are text alternatives of the audio content synchronized with the video. Captions not only have a text description of the spoken word, but also include a description of the background music or sound, so it provides the same level of information as one would get it from the audio itself. To meet web content accessibility standards, always include captions to pre-recorded videos or provide real-time captures. Apart from making videos accessible to people who are deaf or have hearing loss, captioning has additional benefits for all students. It can help people who are learning the language. Captions can also help people viewing videos in loud environments or who cannot have the sound playing due to their environment. Popular video sites such as YouTube and Facebook have specific captioning options available, so once you upload the video to their sites, the captions are automatically generated for you. You should also have a transcript of your video. Transcripts can be thought of as a text version of your video. It should not only include what is spoken in the video, but also describes the actions and the background and other important information that's on screen. There are several options for creating a transcript. Again, YouTube and Facebook creates automatically generated transcripts. So let's look at the 9 hold on. Let me, Francisco, I will get to the chat questions in a moment. Let me just finish. There's just like 2 more slides and then I'll go back to you, but that's a good question. Okay, so this slide is directly related to your assignment. Part of the assignment is, and we'll get to the assignment in a minute, is to talk about the principles of universal design that are reflected in the assignment that you are using. So the 9 principles here, so these are the 9 principles of universal design for accessibility and for learning, and you can find these in the module as well. These principles are on a sort of continuum. It's a way of designing our courses. Each of these not only helps with accessibility, but it just makes it more impactful for everyone. And sometimes I will have individuals indicating that what they're teaching doesn't have anything to do with universal design. And I think every class that we teach has some components of this that we can use, and I'll give you some examples in a minute. So equitable use, that the design is useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. With flexibility of use, the design accommodates a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. Simple and intuitive. With this principle in mind, the design is easy to understand regardless of the user's experience, knowledge, language skills, or current concentration level. The fourth principle is perceptible information. With this in mind, design communicates necessary information effectively to the user. An example of this would be a video presentation with captions. Number 5 is tolerance for error. Number 6 is low physical effort. An example here would be doors to a lecture hall that open automatically for people with a wide variety of physical characteristics. Number 7, size and space for approach and use. An example would be a flexible science lab work area that has adequate workspace for students who are left or right-handed, and for those who need to work from either a seated or a standing position. Number 8, a community of learners in which the instructional environment promotes interaction and communication among students and between students and faculty, making personal connections, office hours, video meetings, phone calls. Again, this is something that is utilized or that applies to each of our classes. And the final principle is instructional climate. This is when instruction is designed to be welcoming and inclusive. An example here would be a statement in the class syllabus affirming the need for class members to respect diversity and acceptability for all. Okay, slide 16 shows the different categories in which universal design can be applied. I won't spend too much more time for this. Our focus is on the fourth element in construction and curriculum and instruction. Slide 17 also is directly connected to the assignment for this class. Part of the assignment also tells you to identify the learning network that your assignment applies to. And here, this is kind of the crux of universal design. The universal design curriculum is aware of the unique nature of each learner and the need to address differences by offering multiple means of engagement, and this is the why we learn, the multiple means of representation, and this is the what we learn, and the multiple means of action and expression, and this is how we learn. It's important to think about each of these concepts as you develop your courses. And then the last slide is the assignment for this course. And I'll just spend a few moments going over this. Description of the course activity, course material, assignment or assessment you are crafting for your online course, description of which learning network you are addressing, description of how you are specifically implementing principles of universal design, and explain why you chose this course element. So my main recommendation here, I think, typically everyone does. There's typically not a problem with this assignment. The only issue that I have sometimes is sometimes folks will only submit their assignment but not address any of the 1 to 4. So they'll submit an assignment which is great and applicable, but they fail to then talk about which learning network the assignment is addressing and how principles of universal design are applied. So again, it doesn't have to be a research paper or very lengthy, but make sure that you do address, these 4 different categories. talk about the activity or the assignment that you're going to be using for your online course. Describe the learning network that you are addressing, and that again was in the previous slide. The why of learning, the what of learning, and the how of learning, and then describe how or what principles of universal design that you're incorporating or that your assignment addresses, and then why you chose this redesign. And oftentimes folks will just say this is something that needed to be redesigned anyway after kind of going through this module, or this is something that I've been playing around with because it's an assignment that students tend to struggle with the most. But it could be a number of different things. Okay, so let me answer. Let's see, Francisco, is there a size limit to a video we want to upload to Blackboard? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know if anyone else does. I have never had a problem with the size limit of any video that I've uploaded to Blackboard. I don't know if anyone else has, but that has not been a problem for videos that I've uploaded. Does the live Blackboard collaborative classroom have the ability to generate captions? Yeah, and that's typically, Joe had said, you could use YouTube if you do run into a limit, and that's typically what I do. Does the live Blackboard collaborative classroom have the ability to generate captions? Thank you. I was just going to say I didn't think so, but I would have to reach out and get a specific answer. But oh, good. Beth says the new update of Collaborate should have that ability. Thank you for that. Not currently, though. Okay. Any other questions? And again, I know I'm the last module that you typically get to. My email address is located on the course itself. So as you work your way through the modules and you get to my module, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I know this can be foreign for many folks. Okay, Beth, do you want to wrap things up a little bit?
Sure thing. Thank you, Jackie. Good afternoon, everybody. First, I want to just say thank you so much to all of you for lending me your time this afternoon. I know it can be kind of tempting to want to be outside, although it's kind of too hot for that at this moment. But thank you for being here and for lending me your ear. As Jackie had mentioned, my name is Beth Cliffel. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit today about the deliverable from the Unit 1 module, where we kind of explore this course content map. And before I get to that, though, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of a background on myself. For those of you that don't know me, I do see a lot of familiar names in the chat, so it's so great to be here with you all. But again, my name is Beth Cliffel. I'm a faculty member of the science department. I teach both in the biological sciences as well as in the area of biotechnology. I have been teaching online for about 10 years now. And like Jackie and Joe, I have completed the ION certification. I have experience not only in teaching online, but also developing online courses. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share with you guys a little bit today about what I've learned through my experiences. So I put together just a really brief presentation for you guys, really mostly just focused on what this course content map is all about. So first, I just want to say thank you to those of you that have already submitted your maps. You kind of hit the ground running and have already started this good work. What I've seen so far looks great. I have not had a chance to grade what's been submitted in the last handful of days, so I will plan to get to that tomorrow. I've been tied up with a couple of other projects. I also wanted to just thank you all for the emails that you're sending me to ask for clarification. Please keep those emails coming as you have questions that arise. But again, the deliverable here for Unit 1, this course content mapping assignment, is really more than just online teaching. It's applicable to any format that you're going to be teaching in. The purpose of this document is really to create a roadmap to demonstrate how you are teaching your course and to really make sure that we're insightful and intentional and mindful about how we achieve the learning outcomes that have been identified for your course. And that's why for the course content map, you're going to be referencing the official course outline that's been approved by the curriculum committee, because that course outline is going to provide you with the current outcomes for that course that you're going to be trying to meet. Now, the course content map itself is relatively straightforward. There's 6 basic steps, which I've outlined on this slide here. The first thing you want to do is you want to identify the course that you would like to work on. So for some of you, you maybe teach just one class and maybe you want to just focus on that class, obviously. For those of you that teach multiple classes at different semesters or in the same semester, just pick the one that you want to work on. Once you've identified the course that you want to work on, you need to download the current course outline for your course. And for those of you that are unfamiliar on how to do that, I'll show you guys in just a moment. It's a relatively straightforward process. But again, that course outline is going to provide to you a lot of what you're going to be putting into your map. Specifically, we have the overall learning outcomes, which are typically found towards the front of the course outline that really just give the big picture. So if you were trying to describe to someone in a couple of sentences the purpose of your course, that's the overall learning outcomes. Towards the end of the course outline in a tabular format, you find the kind of topical learning outcomes. These are the outcomes that have been really kind of correlated to the specific topics that are covered in your course. And both of those are going to be kind of copied over to the course content map. Now, the way that you're copying over specifically the topical course outcomes is going to be dependent on how you organize your class. So depending on whether you organize your class maybe week by week or subject by subject, you would kind of collate those learning outcomes onto the course content map. So once that copying and pasting activity is done, that's really where the reflection starts to come into play. And during this reflection, the idea is to identify what instructional strategies, methods of delivery, and assessment methods you utilize to address each of those outcomes. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I mean by instructional strategy versus method of delivery versus assessment methods in just a moment. But what I'd like to do now, before we get into that, is to kind of just walk you through how you're going to obtain a course outline in case you're not familiar. So to do that, I'm going to switch from sharing my slides with you to sharing my screen so that we can take a look at the portal together, which is where you're going to find those course outlines. So hopefully everybody is able to see my screen now. So I'm going to go over here to the portal. You'll notice that at the top there's this faculty resources link, and if you scroll down, you'll find a tab to curriculum. So again, the faculty resources up here at the top, and then scrolling down to the curriculum. So that takes me to the College Curriculum Committee site. And if I look over here on the bottom right-hand side, there is a link to the course outlines. And so that's where I want to go. This is where all of the currently approved course outlines are stored. So when you click on that, you'll be taken to a page which lists all of the different disciplines in alphabetical order. And so you would find your discipline. And once you clicked on that discipline, right, you would simply find the specific course that you wanted to focus on. And you'll notice that when I open this particular course outline up, this is an introduction to anthropology. And so what I see here is at the very front of, at the very top of the course outline, I'm going to kind of see just the basic information about the course, right? So the course prefix, the course title, the credits, etc. If I scroll down though, I will find the overall learning outcomes. That's the first piece of information you need to identify. And so this right here specifically is what I'm referring to as the overall learning outcomes. Again, remember this is kind of the 1 to 2 sentences, which really explains in a very brief synopsis what the course is all about. So this is going to be copied over to the course content map, which I'll get to in just a moment. The other piece of information you're going to want to pull from this course outline, if we kind of scroll down to the last page where we find the table that breaks down kind of the topical outline. As I was mentioning, you have kind of this list of topics, and corresponding to that, you have topical learning outcomes. So that's what I'm looking at over here. Over here on the right-hand side. So it's these topical learning outcomes that you're also going to be copying and pasting over to that course content map. So on that note, if we go ahead and take a look at that content map now, let me just go back over to our session so that I can stop screen sharing and instead share the course content map file with you. And I know it's a little bit kind of micro font for me, so hopefully you can kind of zoom in. But basically what you see is at the very top of the course map, there's this course learning outcomes. That correlates with the overall learning outcomes for the course. So that part at the very top of your course outline. So you're simply just going to copy and paste that information right here into this space. Now, those topical learning outcomes, which I was just showing you in that table, they're going to come right here into the column under learning objectives, okay? Now, again, these learning objectives are going to be organized based on how you see fit. So you'll notice that there's just, in this case, 12 different modules. You don't have to have 12 modules. You may have 5 modules. You may have 20. Again, it just depends on how you want to organize your class. So for example, in my general biology class, I might organize it week by week. So I might have 16 of these modules. In my anatomy and physiology class, I might organize it by body system, right? So it would be a slightly different organization. But the idea is that once you kind of identified how you want to organize your course, right, you're then going to populate the learning objectives as they correlate to those modules that you've identified. All right, so again, once the copying and pasting is done, right, that's when you want to actually populate these last 3 columns of information where we have instructional strategy, method of delivery, and method for assessment. And so there's a lot of redundancy and overlap here, so it can get a little bit confusing. But the general idea is when we think about an instructional strategy, this is kind of more big picture. So do I want to just lecture to my students? Do I want them to do group work? Do I want to show them a video? Do I want to give them a case study to work on? Do I have a lab activity set up for them? So this kind of identifies whether you're using, say, direct instruction, indirect instruction, independent study, interactive instruction, and experiential learning. These are kind of the main categories for instructional strategies. So direct instruction is what I commonly use. This is kind of just, I'm going to be lecturing to them, right? Indirect instruction, I might have them watch a video, or I might have them read an excerpt and then kind of discuss it with them. Independent study, just as it sounds, right? You're going to have students kind of working on their own, giving them materials to kind of go over as you cover the information. Interactive instruction is obviously going to be a bit more engaging, and I know this overlaps a lot with some of the other modules that you guys have been going through. But with interactive instruction, of course, the students are a little bit more involved. So this is a lot of like the gaming that we can kind of utilize for learning, or even having students take the role of presenting information to their peers. Experiential learning for me and my lab-based classes is pretty easy because we do labs to give them hands-on experiences to really kind of connect with the material. Now, you can kind of see that even as I've been describing these instructional strategies, I've also been kind of putting in there different methods of delivery, right? So whether I'm having the students kind of do group work, or whether I'm having the students listen to me lecture, or I'm giving them a case study to work on, those should kind of correlate to the instructional strategy that you have selected. Now, the method for assessment is also a little bit more straightforward, as Joe was kind of covering towards the beginning of our session today. Assessment is really how we evaluate whether or not they are achieving those learning outcomes. And so common methods of assessment include things like quizzes and tests, but of course there's also written materials that they can give us in the form of reports or research papers, presentations that the students can give. We also would have like discussions. You can also see how some of the methods of delivery will overlap directly with these methods of assessment, right? If you give them a case study as a method of delivery and then ask them to submit that for grading, that can also be a method for assessment. So don't be concerned if you see that you're actually putting the same thing in more than one of these columns, because again, they all do relate to one another. Now, one important thing to kind of keep in mind as you are thinking about your instructional strategies, your method of delivery, your method for assessment, is to try to be kind of going to Jackie's presentation, mindful of the different ways that students learn, right? So we're all familiar with this concept of a learning style, and we understand that different people have different learning styles. So it's important for us to vary our teaching methodologies so that we can meet those learning styles, right? And so instead of just, it's always a quiz and a test, right? Maybe try something a little bit different to assess student learning in a different way, giving us multiple measures of what it is that they're learning. So I've covered kind of about what is intended to be in each of these columns, but just going back to my presentation then just really quickly where we left off, just giving us some more ideas for these different instructional strategies, methods of delivery, and method for assessment. This is just a kind of a bit more of a lengthy list. As I mentioned, the instructional strategies really kind of comes to one of these 5 strategies. The method of delivery can vary quite significantly. I had given some examples here. There's some additional ones like role playing, simulations, debates, problem solving. I had also introduced several of these methods for assessment, including quizzes and exams. Lab reports are an important method of assessment for me in a science-based class. Also using discussion posts, different homework assignments, right? These are all different examples. And one thing that I have really appreciated about being a part of this training is becoming kind of privy to a lot of the different methods of delivery and assessment methods that are being used by instructors across the campus. So it's been a really great experience for me to learn from all of you, and I'm very grateful for that experience. So that being said, that's kind of my spiel for today. I know it's hopefully short and sweet and to the point, but I do want to just kind of open up the floor then to all of you to address any questions that you might have, either regarding this course content map or any other elements of the training that we can help with today. Go ahead, Sheldon.
Hey Beth, how's it going?
Good, thank you.
I just want to make sure I'm clear between the modules that we're organizing it and sort of the topical outline. That the modules really for our class, not the course, right? It's like I just want to make sure like I'm organizing it correctly. So it's not necessarily topic by topic the way I have it listed in the outline.
Right. And realize that that's a great question, Sheldon. Thank you for asking that. Because realize that it can be that way. If you feel like the way that it's organized in the course outline makes the most sense, because that's kind of how you teach it anyways, then you can kind of maintain that organization. If you kind of modify it a little bit, maybe you kind of meld certain topics in a particular way based on how you see the information being most effectively presented, then that's kind of, yeah, again, just a reflection of your own individual approach. Yeah, great question. Go ahead, David.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if this is redundant. I was trying to get my audio visual working
Oh,
properly.
no worries.
I'm looking at the universal instruction. I teach world religions, and
Yeah.
I kind of see the way uh, Daniele Manni organized the class, and it's very difficult. I can do it, but my question is do I have to use the universal instruction, or can I modify my topics? Does that make sense?
It does, yes, absolutely. So, of course, you have academic freedom, right, to kind of teach in the format and in the organization that you would like, right? The key is that the topical learning outcomes, that's really what you need to be meeting, especially if you talk about a class that has like an IAI code, right? Because we're really talking about transferability. So we want to make sure that the courses that we are teaching are somewhat uniform in that regard, right? So you are more than welcome to kind of organize it and approach the teaching however you would like, but those topical learning outcomes still need to be met by the students. Does that answer your question?
Oh yes. One of the things I know, this is getting into the nitty gritty. One of the things is there's a dying religion called Zoroastrianism, and so one of the, I won't bother you with the details, but one of the um, beliefs out there is that Zoroastrianism influenced Judaism, and there was a progression. Um, I have no problem really teaching that, but it wasn't the way I delivered. More, there's religious groups in the United States like Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness, that most of the students are going to run into, um, uh, you know, in their daily life, and that's where I focused, and I'm not sure as to it's going to take some revamping, and I'll do it, but it's just different. So does that make sense?
It does. And I think, not being as familiar with the course itself, it's a little challenging for me to kind of judge where you have the wiggle room and where you don't, right? So I always, again, and I don't mean to just be redundant, I'm hoping to try to kind of clarify, but I think as long as when you're looking at that course outline and you see that there's certain learning objectives, right, that need to be met, the degree to which you meet them, the extent to which you cover a particular topic, the breadth and depth of which how you approach each of the kind of subjects that you're going to be covering is up to you, as long as those learning outcomes are being met. That's really kind of what you're held to, if you will. Does that clarify?
Yes. I guess is how do you get a a course syllabus approved? Do you have multiple? Do they have to be approved by committees? I'm not sure
I see.
how that
So,
works.
so thinking about like trying to actually change the content and change those objectives. Is that what you're talking about?
Or to have accessibility to develop another course, another content that's approved. I mean, I won't get to the nitty gritty, but there's basically, long and the short, there's basically no Zoroastrians around anymore. It's, in my opinion, it's a dying religion, where students will run more commonly into something like Wicca or something else. So
I see.
I guess my question, and I've been teaching a long time now, is I don't want students to lose out. It's intro to religion or religions. I don't want students to lose out on groups that they will most likely encounter versus a philosophy course. It is a philosophy course where an idea is given to the students, but they lack knowledge in other religions. And I see this specifically happening in philosophy and religion, maybe in literature and English, or the arts. I don't see it happening so much in sciences or mathematics. And that's kind of, I'll do what I'm told to do, but that's kind of where I'm struggling.
Yeah,
So,
I understand what you're saying. So I think that in general, right, these course outlines, we're hoping that they have some relevancy and currency, and that's one of the reasons why we have to kind of come through the curriculum process every couple of years to maintain that currency, and we certainly rely on the of our faculty body to understand what is current. So it seems like the most kind of logical avenue then would just to start a conversation with the other faculty that are teaching that course and with your chair to see whether or not you know, if you did update the course outline in this manner, would it still be transferable and kind of meeting the guidelines that we are held to, especially if it was an IAI course? Because again, a lot of our articulation agreements with our receiving institutions are based on these, or not a lot of them, all of our articulation agreements with our receiving institutions are based on our approved course outlines. So when we start changing things about our course outline, then it might impact the transferability of that class. And so that doesn't mean that we cannot update and that we don't have some flexibility, but it would be up to really those experts, including yourself in the area, to really kind of have that discussion and move that forward.
understood, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. All right. Yeah, right, exactly. No problem, Bill. Any other questions? I got you. I understood that. All right. All right. Well, of course, if you guys do have questions as you have more time to kind of process everything that you've been learning, I know it's been an intense couple of days and probably an intense, week or so since you started the training. But I do want to just again give you my sincere thanks for all that you do for our students and for the college and for your participation in this training. And I look forward to the continued collaboration and keep the emails coming. And I will be providing feedback both on what you submit to me via email as well as what you submit in Blackboard. Oh, yes. Thank you, Bill. Yes, yes, yes. I thank you so much. That's a great, great comment. So just before we do wrap up and we say our dues, there you can have multiple instructional strategies, multiple methods of delivery, multiple methods for assessment, exactly for all of these. And again, there's going to be a lot of overlap. There can be redundancy. So there's not really a right or wrong way to do it. The idea is just to be reflective on how you teach your class so that we're a little bit more intentional. And that gives us a lot of more flexibility when we want to adapt new things. We can kind of see maybe where we're a little bit stagnant when we have this course map in front of us. So with that, I hope that you guys all have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Thank you all so much. Janusa, it's good to have you here today. Go ahead, Sharon. Oh, yep, no problem, Sheldon. Of course, Anissa. Thank you, Francisco.
Thanks, Beth. Nice
Yeah,
to
of
hear
course.
you again.
I know it's so good to hear your voice. Can't wait to see you in person. I know I've been
Yep.
missing all of my colleagues for sure.
At least I know that I can hear you and Joe right now too. So that was
I
great.
know. You got a double whammy of us today.
Yep. You guys take care, okay?
Yeah, you too. You take it easy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and information. Thanks again.
No problem, John. You take care.
You too.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you, guys.
No problem, Dion.